Welcome to the Social Media for Business podcast, where I am your host, Rebecca Bridgen from Innovate Social, specialists in managing B2B on-brand maritime social media. And today we will be speaking with Patrick Condy, content creator and founder of PKC Media, also social media managers. So welcome, Patrick.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for having me. I think I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting little conversation for an hour. I think we've talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and I think there's some real meat on the bone in there. So I'm looking forward to getting into it, sharing with everyone else some of our insights.
Absolutely. And so Patrick, for the listeners, Patrick will be sharing some expertise and insight into content creation and specialist maritime social media with some absolutely fantastic results. We're on the same page when like you said, when we had a conversation yesterday, we seem to be very much on the same page. First of all, welcome, Patrick, and thank you for agreeing to be our fifth guest, sharing knowledge and your journey to the rest of the maritime marketing and maritime business owners who might be listening in for some great tips and advice. So let's just get started by you sharing a little bit about your background and how you came to specialize in social media marketing in maritime specifically, and your key specialisms, which are photography and videography.
So I find myself now based on the Isle of Wight here in Cowes, which has kind of been a home for me for almost 8 years now. It being the mecca of sailing and the home of water sports in the south of England, I find it a very easy place to be, and my work has often led me here. But to start with, I'm originally from Scotland, and I started up there with just a GoPro and a very basic DSLR. I fell into photography. I used to play a lot of sport and a lot of rugby, and was a sports coach. My degree was in sports coaching and psychology, and I had a very large knee injury. And the knee injury meant that I was no longer able to coach or play sport. And my father, for Christmas, bought me a camera and a book and said, "Here you go. You'll figure it out. You can't really get very mobile, so have fun with that." And that led me down a path that I haven't really looked back from. And it grew and grew from there. And I started taking pictures of my friends sailing and making little GoPro videos and edits. I grew up as a sailor as well. And so that really led me into the sport with the camera. That led to moving to the Isle of Wight for a job with the Extreme Sailing Series, which was a traveling circuit of foiling catamarans. We went around the world. So in the first year, I was maybe 20. We traveled around the world. We did 6 different countries in about 8 months. And I was there taking pictures and running the social medias with the rest of the team with it. So it was a pretty big eye-opener, and I haven't really stopped since then.
That's a pretty exciting field to be filming.
I think I haven't really stopped to look back since then, and it's led me down some really interesting paths and different clients to work with, and then realizing that actually filming on boats and filming on the water isn't all that easy. Well, I find it somewhat easy, but other people don't, and so you can forge a pretty nice career out of doing just that.
Yeah, and a pretty exciting industry to film as well. So the maritime industry has seen, we've been discussing this actually, it's suddenly seen a shift in gear. It's the start of this year specifically, really, seeking out social media marketers like you and I, and we've both seen a massive increase in that since January. It's sort of like, boom, people have woken up and they're looking for a more strategic approach to their marketing, and they're waking up and they're realizing that social media really is the future. What do you think is the catalyst for this?
Yeah, I think it is really interesting, Rebecca. And as you say, it's the start of the year has really kicked it off. And I think the classic cliche of, new year, new me, seemingly might be the way for some of these businesses. And I think actually on a more business economical front, that times are harder for everybody, and everybody is looking at their bottom line. And so when people are spending thousands with big agencies or big media houses or whatever it may be, they're going, are we getting our value for what we're spending? And I'm not going to criticize anyone else's work. I think people that are out there are doing great stuff, but we're at differently at a different rate for the same sort of output. And so I think that's forcing them to look at what it is they need. And that's how they come around to, people like you and I, which are more of a one-stop shop for start to finish. And I think that's what's driving some of the change. And couple that with some of the technological advances that have been happening over the last 6 months. I think people are really waking up to, I need to do something, or we're going to get left behind here.
Yeah. And or they're starting to listen to their marketing managers saying, actually social media really is a specialist area. just like SEO and all of that is now. Social media really is so utterly complex that it really does need its own dedicated team. So how are maritime businesses rethinking their social media strategy specifically in response to this?
I think a lot of them are looking now, rather than just saying, okay, social media is something that we need to do on the side. They're realizing, as you say, that it's a pretty big driver. It's what's selling, and it's where people are first interacting with your business, whether you're making offshore oil rigs or you're selling life jackets. As soon as anybody hears you or sees anything online, they're going to look you up. And so social media is it's the shop window.
Yeah. Interactive shop window.
Exactly. And I think people are realizing that. And they're now pushing into higher quality content and making that shop window look nice and be what they want it to be, but not spending money doing it, which is always the conundrum.
Yeah, because it can be very costly. And social media is the sort of, I wouldn't say cheaper, because it is very specialist and you are requiring a specialist to do a lot of work. But and I've discussed this previously with other social media marketers because I've seen it advertised, and we'll move on to this later on in the episode, where you have these AI machines doing a year's worth of content for 200 quid or something. And you're like, yeah, it's churning out stuff, but it's people aren't going to engage with it or relevant. You need that human element. But we're not against AI, so we'll move on to that in a second. But yeah, so I'll move on to my next question, which many maritime companies still, although we're talking about the rise in maritime companies suddenly kind of going, right, let's get on this and let's do this now, 2025, this is it. But there are still actually a lot of social media not being done by maritime companies. They still haven't quite woken up to it. So in your experience, what are the most significant benefits that social media brings to the B2B sector and more specifically maritime?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing. Over the last few years, we see the drive of social media, as I say, is that shop front window. And people are realizing that that's the initial handshake. That's the first thing that people are viewing. And the maritime industry in some formats is pretty old school and operates on a very old school policy. And that's the biggest changes, that the people now that are coming into these marketing roles and the decision maker roles are probably not as old and are realizing that times have to change.
Yeah.
And that's what's driving the change into, let's make our shop front window look more appealing and a bit more useful, and people might come shopping in our shop, if we stick with that analogy.
Yeah. Generational changes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of the people that are doing it well are not doing it too hard. They're just being themselves. They're just making that shop front look slightly nicer. If you look at a Greg's shop front, it's not the most prettiest shop front. It's not doesn't offer you all the information, but you know what you're getting. And that's, I think, the key.
And when we were talking about, it's the reactive shop window, we were also chatting about some funny B2B brands yesterday, because we were talking how different brands are communicating via social media effectively. And we do have to differentiate between the type of communication that goes out via B2C as opposed to B2B. But we also acknowledge that we are still communicating to other human beings. So it is still people to people. But what we establish, and actually, I never said this to you yesterday, what I wanted to say was, I think this is the first time I've ever realized this or seen it, is that, yes, it is a people to people. And I've heard that term before. Wake Media, they do people to people, and they're absolutely on point on that. But the difference between the people to people and the B2C in the B2B is that we're talking to people in their professional capacity. You can use humorous stuff, but you have to really consider how you're wanting to portray your brand and that professional aspect of it. So we talked a bit about that, didn't we?
Yeah, and for sure, I think it's the same. I think a lot of these things come down to storytelling, whether it's in your video editing and your proposals, your storytelling, but even in that initial engagement with somebody, you're telling the story of how you propose to tell their story. And the stories that you tell your mates down the pub and the way that you would tell them are very different than the way that you would tell a story in a business meeting.
100%.
That carries on into every form of output and communication, is that it's okay to be funny. If I'm in a business, if I somehow find myself in a big 9-person board meeting, I might make a small joke about the weather. I'm not going to make a joke about me being super drunk at the rugby at the weekend. So it's knowing your audience, knowing what's relevant, and that carries over for those brands that say, we want to be funny. And you go, okay, well, why do you want to be funny? And they say, well, look at innocent smoothies. And you go, no, that's very different. That's very them. If you're a very serious brand, you can't be making jokes because it just devalues you as a brand. It's an argument I find myself having quite frequently that.
Yeah, it's really tricky. And we talked about innocent smoothies. John, I can't remember his last name, but he's absolutely hilarious. He's brilliant, and he's now moved on to surreal cereals because I follow him. Watched him on a webinar once, and his insight was really, really good. And funnily enough, webinar was humor on social media for brands, so it was a really interesting. I think Aldi was on there.
When you look at somebody like Aldi, I love my fiance loves the Aldi Twitter. Whenever anything comes up, she's coming in. Look, Aldi, and you see Sainsbury's trying to interact with it, and then he's getting roasted by Aldi again, and you go, oh, maybe shouldn't, maybe should have left it out. And somebody like I forget his name, but he is all over my social media. It's the guy who talks about wine. He's got big curly hair. And he calls himself a wine wanker. That's how he defined it.
I am going to have to check this guy out. I've not seen him.
Yeah, he's very, very funny. He's selling you wine in a serious manner. And he's a prime example of a serious business that's funny.
But like you said, like we were saying, that is very much aimed at the customer. So it's a different selling to customers, the humor is there and we do connect. And like you said, in the boardroom, you can make a joke. I was having a conversation last night actually about somebody who was just doing their mini Viva and they were delivering to basically a load of police and he made a mini joke, but it just fell flat on his face. So it's, it really is about the environment that you're in. Can you share an example where effective social media marketing has dramatically transformed a maritime brand engagement or reputation? I know you have a few examples in your bag.
Yeah, I think one of them actually, which again, to kind of go to the Greg shopfront analogy, which I seem to have managed to latch myself onto, something like Diverse. Actually, so my house overlooks the yard here in Diverse. And they're not a flashy brand. They're not, they're making Rolls Royces, but they are where they are, and they're very successful at building, offshore support vessels and large commercial ships, and support ship vessels. And all that they do is they post nice, consistent pictures with nice captions, and they look professional. Website's done well. It's a very good example of not a cool business. It's not flashy. What they've done is made it look nice and professional. And that's kind of really what it needs to be.
Then they are who they say they are. I mean, that's going back to your comment that you just made about 10 minutes ago about the authenticity of fundamentally the brand needs to be authentic to itself. And that also reaffirms in episode 3, when I was talking to Nikki DeBear, she was saying the same thing. You have to really know who you are. And actually latching onto that, there has been one time where I couldn't represent a brand simply because I knew I couldn't do a good job for them because they didn't know who they were yet.
Yeah, it's hard though, isn't it?
You can't communicate who you are if you don't know yourself. So I think that's a real key before you even start thinking about your marketing. Know who you are.
It is, and I think I've sat in many meetings for hours, basically going around on the seat. Who are we? What do we do? Get everything in a sentence. And one of the ones I'm working with at the moment, they're called Sustainable Extrico. They've got an amazing recycling system. It's never been done before in the world. So they can take sales, so carbon fiber and Dacron sales, and fully recycle them. So not upcycling into bags, fully recycle them. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
And it goes on to wind turbines and all sorts of other composite materials. But it is the least sexy subject topic ever. And it's not funny. But the guys that do it just love recycling. If people can be passionate about science and recycling, these boys are. And that's all we are. And it's coming on heads and tails. It's doing really well. But, it leans into just got to be who yourself.
Passion sells. It really does. I mean, if you really know your stuff and you're really passionate about it, it comes across in the conversation, and that should come across in your social media as well. It should be the same.
For sure. And I think it's a huge learning, actually. What's interesting about, people like us is that we have our own brands, and our brand is employed by other brands to do exactly the same thing that we're doing for our own brand. So hopefully people kept up with that. But what I mean by that is people see my profile where I'm on there talking about me taking pictures in my Crocs, or I've been out getting wet on the yacht,
Crocs.
taking pictures or whatever it may be. And they go, well, he's doing a good job of, I've got his story. I understand him. And they go, well, I need that for me. The idea for me clicked, ironically, with on my own personal Instagram before I set up PKC Media. I was living in a rented house and I'd never had grass before. I rented this house and I had a very small patch of grass in the back garden. And I became obsessed with getting it nice and trimming it in green.
You didn't use scissors, did you?
I thought it, yeah, I did it. And I thought it would be hilarious to sort of, I knew my mates would enjoy it. I'll put a few things up on Instagram stories and I'll say that there'll be an update in a couple of weeks and it'll be the grass talk or whatever we called it. It wouldn't have been TikTok at that time, grass Instagram. About 5 years later, I've moved house 4 times since then. And I still continue on. Now I put it on my close friends, so just my friends and family follow it. But people love it. And it's some of the, a Saturday afternoon, I'll post a little, yesterday I've been out there sanding the grass in yellow crop wellies and looking a bit silly and talking about my grass. But people love it. And that's kind of who I am. And that's where they engage with. And I think that's a good mantra to have on the social media platforms.
Moving on to the next topic that we're going to discuss, because we've discussed this quite a lot. And actually, we do seem to be really on the same page of this. Dare we be bold and say it out loud? Because a lot of people think like this, but they daren't say it. And it's about AI, obviously, a hot topic. It's not going away. And so I wanted to talk about the tools that are reshaping the role of social media marketing. And what's the general response amongst creatives? Well, I'm going to let you say it, Patrick.
Yeah, it's a dirty secret. People are using it and not admitting it, which I think is a bit naughty. And then actually, I think you're missing out because you're hiding it. You're hiding in the closet. Come out and say you're using it and embrace it and learn how to use it properly.
Yes. That was the conversation that we had. And this is now the third conversation we've had on this very topic. A lot of the naysaying from the creators of this, obviously it's concern and worry that it's putting them out of work. And that's a natural reaction. Of course it is. And it doesn't replace the human being element. And we'll talk about that in a second. But the main reason that people are saying, oh, you can tell, and they're even putting posts out how you tell if it's AI written. But actually, if you know how to use it properly, you cannot tell that it's AI generated. But there is a skill, and that skill is being developed. That people are now selling AI prompts because they know how to prompt AI really, really well to get those results. So that's becoming a currency in itself.
It's wild. I mean, people that worry they're going to be out of a job probably will be out of a job because they're if they haven't clocked onto it being a thing, then they're a bit late behind the game, and you need to be playing in that same field now. It's like predictive text on your phone. Everybody uses that. It's actually powered by AI now, so you're actually using it already. Your microphones in Microsoft Teams or anything, it's integrating into life, so you can't fight it. I think it would be like people still trying to use fax. It doesn't work anymore. And as you say, the more that you lean into it and the more that you understand it, I think it probably came aware to me maybe a year and a half ago when ChatGPT first launched. And I thought, give that a try. And it was a bit rubbish and it was a bit clunky. And I came back to it in a few weeks and it got better. I started using it for some tasks at work and I thought, wow, this is really saving me some time here.
Yeah.
And I seriously, nobody's gone and noticed that anything's happening. And I spoke to my boss about it and I said, look, I'm going to own up to something here. And I've been saving myself a lot of time doing this. And I've been doing a lot less. But actually, I think this could really transform how we work as a business because it gives us the opportunity to save some time. And that was a year and a half ago. And subsequently, it's got quicker and quicker and better. And now the power lies, as you say, in knowing how to use it. And the biggest tip that I could sort of give people and how to start using it is to build a model. So there are you can use ChatGPT in the free version, but if you're serious about using it, I think it's a small subscription.
It doesn't cost very much. I think it's like 20 quid or something.
And you can start building these models and using the higher intelligence platforms. If a brand approaches me and they want to discuss some ideas, the first thing I'll do is I'll go and I'll look at the website and I'll click around the website and learn the brand like I always would. And now I speak out loud to ChatGPT and I say things and it logs them into the model. Then what I do is you can say, you can export a web page from Google Chrome. I export the whole thing, load it in there. And essentially what I've created is this huge Excel spreadsheet of this company, which is not just numbers, it's facts, it's thoughts, it's their brand guidelines, it's every bit of information that I can get on it. And then you can search it like a database, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. It's brilliant. I use it every day, if I'm honest, as an assistant, really. When it came out, I didn't look at ChatGPT at first. I used Jasper.ai. Basically, it's just a writing tool. It's a sort of built on the back of ChatGPT, I'm pretty sure. I think ChatGPT is just the original, isn't it? Although I think there's some that are coming out that are better now. So I've yet to explore those, but it is on my list. But I will. But I use it, like you're saying, I use it as an assistant, especially when you're running a small business. And I often have friends that will call me up and ask me a question about business, or I'm not really sure what to do this, what do you think? And I say, well, I'm not an expert in whatever you've just asked me. But I tell you what I would do if I was in your position. So I would go and I would literally ask ChatGPT, lay out exactly what I need to know, and it would come back and it educates. So it's educational. But I'm also going to go back to something else that we spoke about, going back to the whole creatives aspect, which is one of the fears that they have is, or one of the things I've read a few times is that it's going to kill creativity. I would argue the opposite, because I have gazillions of ideas generally on a daily basis. Most creatives do, because our minds are often ADHD, but our minds are filled with these amazing ideas. And we don't necessarily have the skills to be able to meet these ideas out, these creative ideas out. And now with these AI tools, they are making the possibility of more creativity available to people who couldn't necessarily. I think personally, you'll see a boom in creativity. What do you think?
I think so too. I mean, I think creativity has always been, somebody said marketing and creativity. I think, I forget his name, Rory something again, a very famous marketer. And he's always talking about ADHD is the best way, marketing and ADHD is the best way to monetize ADHD. And I think using ChatGPT is an enabler to that. It enables these a million ideas to become something good. And you're not saying, write me a video script. You're saying, here's my idea. Here's what I need. I know that I need 30 seconds because of the platform, because of X, Y, and Z. This is the storyline. Just kind of help me organize my thoughts. And I think I said it to you yesterday. It's similar to, if you think of a marketing executive, these big media houses, they will come into a room and say, I've got a pitch that I've won with a client. And it's a campaign about fairness. Figure it out. And they'll walk out of the room. And so now, and then there's a room full of people there, combination of, assistants, creatives, junior creatives, accountants, the whole thing inside the big firm to figure it out. And so you're paying them hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of salary, whereas actually what this thing is helping your marketing executive do is go into the webpage, type in what he wants, and go, help me out. And then it kind of encompasses all of the things there. Nobody questions the model of spending millions in media houses. So what's the difference from using this?
Absolutely. I agree. It's like we've all got this little pocket executive team that we can pull out whenever we need. It's amazing. I mean, because you were talking about, budgeting and things like that. We're creatives. We're not chief financial officers. It's not our world. But actually, with the help of ChatGPT to run our small businesses, our small agencies, we can use things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's super powerful. I have a great accountant and she must pull her hair out at me before. And in the last year, it's really helped me out. I'm not having it run my numbers. I'm looking at a spreadsheet. And I know that one of the great things about being sort of ADHD or neurotypical or neurodivergent is that you see problems in a really different way.
Yeah.
And so I know the problem and I know how I want to solve it. I just can't add 2 and 6 together. And I definitely can't add 2 and 6 together in a spreadsheet. So I know the problem and I know how to solve it. And so I can make ChatGPT do the 2 and 6 bit in the spreadsheet and then put it back in. And then pretty quickly it becomes almost a non-problem of the, don't need my accountant, but it helps.
You've got that whole confidentiality. And there is an aspect of that to AI now as well, that you have to be quite careful what you do input into ChatGPT now.
That's why it's clever, right? Is that it's not only scraping everyone else's information, it's scraping yours and your idea. And so that's how it learns. And your learning model that you're putting into there is still, they're selling on to everyone else. I was involved in an interesting program for a sailing team. It was happening in another department, but I saw what was happening, and the model is about autopilots. And basically, you would start a race with a product, and it would learn. So it's got machine learning. It was offline machine learning. So it learned within itself.
Wow.
Which is interesting because then at the end of it, you own the learning and the data that's cleverer than when it started. The ChatGPT does the same thing, but it's doing it online in a sense on a global scale. So you can't take your ideas and information offline. It doesn't work like that.
I mean, there is a balance, which actually leads me to my next question of is the balance of the human touch to the technology. We were talking about campaigns that we run on social media. So we've talked about how we can use AI to create those campaigns and to think more clearly for the social media strategies and content that we produce. But, and I mentioned it earlier, it does still need that human element because it isn't a human and it doesn't think like a human. It just helps you evolve your thoughts. So you do need that element of the human touch to sort of peel back the layers. How do you maintain, going back to the original thread of the conversation where we were talking about you need to be authentic to who you are and communicating with people, but in that professional capacity, and now you're using AI, how do you maintain that balance to creating that content with the human touch in your campaigns, but maintain that authenticity?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. And that's kind of the crux of AI. And I think you have to be very careful with it. And for me, a lot of the way I like to tackle my problems is at the very, not at the top, but at the end, when you're actually implementing the solution. And to me, the implementation of the solution is what are you posting on social media and what does it look like? And so what you have to control very carefully is that still has your tone of voice and it is a human. And so if you work backwards from that's the solution at the end to the other direction, how do you keep that control throughout the process? And to me, that is carefully managing what you're asking the AI to do. So again, in ChatGPT, you're building these models. You're not saying, give me a social media plan. Because if you do that, it'll actually give you a pretty rubbish answer.
Yeah.
If you say, social media plan based around this with these themes, and then you have to read it, So it's not, when you're asking for something, you certainly the tasks that I do, it's not like give me a video script, bang, I've copy and pasted that out to the client. There's maybe 8 or 9 back and forwards at least with the model before it spits something out. And that's on the written format. And you look at something like Adobe Firefly with their Photoshop generative fill. So the background behind me, I could suddenly have flames, but it will give you 3 formats of flames behind you. One will be, a kebab shop flame. One might be a bonfire, but one might be a huge explosion. So you have to choose which one. And again, my creative vision may be me at a kebab shop. So the kebab shop flame works. You're still inputting into it. I think what is the danger with AI is where it learns and publicizes itself, which there is a theory that is happening a lot in the world of social media and politics, which is pretty worrying in that humans aren't controlling it. And then people are using it to deliberately clickbait, deliberately be inflammatory, which is tricky. And that's where, but again, it still has the human involvement. That the argument of that is that it's the Sun newspaper headline. They're writing inflammatory headlines. They're just using ChatGPT to write even more inflammatory ones. So I think people will still be involved in it for some time. And that's the key to making it, circling back to what we do, is that the more oversight you see in it, the more genuine it is.
Because you do need that human, you need the human being to come up with the ideas themselves, because like you were saying, ChatGPT can come up with things, but they're generic, they're base, and they're quite often not quite on the mark that you need them to be. So you as a human being needs to guide it to that. And then even after it's produced anything, you then have to go in and edit it. And I must admit, I go in and look and I think, no, you've just not got it, dude, And then I just go and write it myself because I think it's flipping heck, it's quicker. But actually, you need that element. Interesting what you were talking about there was the genuineness of the media. And we were talking about the new social media platform, Blue Sky, and how there's a shift. I mean, I'd not heard of it until I think it was Jason Knight put on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago for his PR company that they're coming off X, which I didn't like. I didn't really like it much when it was Twitter, to be honest. I just found it very negative. if you got in the wrong circles. But they've come off Twitter or X or whatever, and they're going on to Blue Sky. So I have set up a profile on Blue Sky, but I have to admit, I've not posted anything. So my scheduling tool hasn't quite come up to date with that and got that in there yet. So I'd have to do the posts directly. But I need to just spend a bit of time digesting it and seeing what it is. But I like the fact that people have gotten tired of being manipulated. And we were talking about Facebook and Instagram and things like that. And you find it very difficult nowadays to get that genuine human connection with your friends, which is the whole reason you signed up to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram in the first place. You can't even see them come up in your feed because you're too busy being sold to. And I think the general populace is going, no, enough is enough now.
Yeah, the selling is brutal. My Instagram stories, the feed is better, but the stories, every third story that I'm being sold something, and it's terrible. And you just go, I don't really need this anymore. And Blue Sky in itself is emerging, and they will find their way in how the platform comes around. I think it will look like Twitter did in the early days.
Yes, because you were saying it was the founder of Twitter.
Yeah, has set this up, which is why it looks very similar. And the ethos is similar to what it started with back in the day. So I think it will start in that manner. And then something like, ironically, LinkedIn, although for professionals, if you want to see what people are doing, that's where you can see it. You see someone that you knew at university, you go, what they're doing, and you probably go in there and you're going to see it, which I think is nicer in a sense that you can see what humans are doing.
Yes. And we had that conversation yesterday because actually I'm a massive fan of LinkedIn, as most of you will know, because that's where I spend most of my time. And you're the same. And it's very much, we've had the same observations, is that you can connect with people on LinkedIn and you can connect with their ideas and what they are doing. But it's just, I think it's a bit better than Facebook because it's not somebody just posting a picture of their dinner or anything like that. It's for people who really want to expand their minds. It's for people who want to learn. And that's why long form content and blogs still do really well on LinkedIn, because actually, generally speaking, the people who are on LinkedIn, are educated. But the platform itself is still fairly authentic to how it originated. It's still there for that reason.
Exactly. And I think that's what people need to lean into with these platforms. And I often say that to the clients that we work with, in that actually each platform is very different. Everybody knows what Tinder is, but you're not going on Tinder to look for someone to have a conversation with over a coffee and play a real extreme game of chess. Everybody knows what Tinder and dating profiles sometimes start out being for. Yes, you might be looking for relationships or something more casual, but you're not on there just to make friends. You're making slightly more than friends. And so each platform is different. And the same with LinkedIn. If you take LinkedIn at one end of the scale, and you take Tinder at the other end of the scale, then everything else kind of falls in the middle. And remembering where those fall in the middle is super key to figuring out the tonality of each platform.
I almost feel that Facebook is falling into the whole Daily Mail aspect of it's becoming that sort of tabloid aspect. And half of the stuff you don't know that when you're clicking on it, if it's true or not. So you have to go away and research. And obviously you and I know that most people don't. They just take it word for word. So it's just the ultimate manipulation tool.
One thing I found quite interesting recently inside Google Chrome, the app, before you search anything in the search engine, you can scroll and it gives you a little news feed. And it's pretty good. It doesn't have any of your friends or any of your connections on there, but it knows that you're interested in sailing and knows that I like photography and I live in the Isle of Wight. And so if you scroll that, you'll get news that is relevant and it's not fact checked or anything like that, but it's not being paid for by the Daily Mail for me to see it.
Yes.
And it's quite refreshing. I would advise people give that a try. And it kind of shows the importance of SEO.
Well, indeed. SEO is not dead at all. And it's very much alive in social platforms as well. It feels like this session today has just gone by so quickly. And I actually just had to check the time because I was thinking, no, it can't possibly be coming towards the end of the podcast. But sure enough, it is. So I wanted to wrap up this episode with what advice would you offer to ship owners, managers, maritime businesses, you name it, who are considering a fresh, innovative approach to their marketing efforts this year?
It's an interesting one for the new year, new me. And I would say, forget all the nonsense in the middle of the problem and look at the very start and go, what is the problem? And you go, we don't like what's going out as our brand strategy, or we are not getting enough people in our shop. That's your problem. And then go to the very other end of the scale and go, who are we and why is this a problem? Figure out the big question and the big bit. And once you've got that, then have a look around at who might meet your needs. And I'm not trying to plug us for more business here, but who might meet your needs and what can help you in an effective budget, and then work with them on the middle bit. But figure out the start and end, and then the middle bit will come. And I think that middle bit, certainly if you employ somebody else or you want to tackle it internally, the middle bit can be helped with AI. And that's my biggest advice, I think, for this year.
You're right. I mean, you've got companies like Innovate Social, PKC, and we're all a little bit different. It's something that I've observed over the years. I mean, we've been going for about 4 years now. And in the beginning, I sort of wanted to understand, what everybody else did and how we all fit in. And we're all a little bit different. And that's because we all are made up by the skills that our teams are. So, and some of those skills will work really, really well with different types of companies and not so much with others. So I think you're right. It's worth exploring the different social media agencies or solo folks and see the type of content that they're putting out and see if that would align and what would get the best out of your social media marketing. But also, you're absolutely right on that deep dive. I've done that with a few clients of going, what is your why? Who are you? What is your why? Why do you even exist? Because we need to get to the bottom of that to understand what we need to be communicating.
Yeah, and the worst mistake that people can make on that is having a massive brand guidelines document or a brand ethos. Throw it out of the window, give me a one sentencer. You're saying to somebody in the pub, he's a nice guy, he does this. And you say it in about 4 words. That's what you need. You need 4 words that you say to somebody in the pub that explains to you who you are or your problem or what it is you're trying to tackle.
It's like when you go to a networking event and they say, so what do? You should have in your line, well, we do this, but. Boom. It's as clear as that. That's a great bit of advice. Thank you for that. And you also mentioned a diverse mixture of high-end next to authentic behind the scenes kind of content. Do you want to share a bit about that?
Yes, this is something that I've been pushing people a lot for in the people that I've spoken with and worked with. And again, somewhat based on the idea of my grass series, but then putting it into the real world and seeing how it goes is that the more authentic content you put out of yourself, whether it be if you're the business owner or the naval architect of the firm, take a picture of you in a different office on your iPhone. Don't think about it. The more that it gets out there, the more people understand you. The more that you post, the less you're the quiet guy in the corner of the room. Nobody likes the quiet guy in the corner of the room. People like the guy in the middle talking. So be the guy in the middle of the room talking. And then actually, when you're posting the really polished content that you maybe have had an agency or somebody else do, people are already listening. People are already looking at that. So then it elevates your extra stuff to make it look even better. So I think that would be the key, is don't be the guy in the corner of the room. Don't be the watcher, be the talker.
One of our mantras at Innovate Social is you have to be visible to be valuable. And it really is that way nowadays, isn't it? And you're right about the whole personal brand, because like you were saying, it's B2B. And yes, brands can talk to brands and have a bit of fun, like you were saying with, Aldi and Sainsbury's and things like that. And that's really great. People do like to see that with that whole collaboration, interaction, but it's the people behind the brands as well. So if you have a really great team behind your brand that are active on LinkedIn, your brand's performance will definitely do much better than a brand whose team are silent, because people, and it's like you're saying, people can't see who you are behind the shiny, beautiful, quality facade. And that's why the genuine content, even though you need to have that diverse mix, you're absolutely right. But the genuine content, the authentic content, the rough around the edges kind of content, it's almost like you've done it really quickly. You probably haven't, but this is the subconscious, I think. You've done it really quickly. Therefore, what you are saying is truthful. It is genuine. It is authentic. Therefore, we trust what you're saying. So, and having that underscore it is powerful.
Yeah, and I would say to people, do it quickly. Do it. Don't overthink it. Do it and post it. And then it's out there. And that's why I often do a lot of my behind the scenes things from shoots on the way home from the shoot or the coffee break of the shoot, and just do it. And it's out.
I know, because we get so scared And I know because, I don't like doing it myself, but we get so scared about putting a quick video about our thoughts. And we think, oh, what if people don't like it? So what, actually? At least what you're thinking is real and you made a comment. And if someone doesn't like it, one of the nice things on LinkedIn is that we're fairly polite and respectful towards one another when we do share an idea, because it's that nice variety. But there's a lady I follow called Amanda Sordell, and she has a personal branding agency called Clout. Her line for her agency is just post it. And I do. And I love it. It's refreshing. But she's absolutely right. Just don't be scared to share your ideas and put yourself in the spotlight, because no one's going to know you're there unless you do that. And you've got to be visible to be valuable. And that's our mantra. So
I think so. That's definitely it.
Coming towards the end, we've just given me some lovely pieces of advice, and for our listeners, where can people find you if they want to ask you more questions or reach out and hire you?
Yeah, so PKC Media, hopefully if you do any Googling, you'll find me. There isn't that many people that come up with me, but all major social media platforms you'll find me on. But LinkedIn and Instagram are the ones that I keep up to date the most. And if you're lucky, you might eventually end up on the grass.
I was going to say, you're going to see some grass cutting.
Yeah, you might be able to see some on the grass. But yeah, PKC Media on LinkedIn and Instagram is the best place to come have a look. And from there, you'll see my website and you can check out all the other pictures and things that I've been up to.
Thanks, Patrick. Well, that's it for episode 4 of the Social Media for Business podcast with myself, Rebecca Bridgen from Innovate Social, and the fantastic Patrick Condy from PKC Social Media Agency. Be sure to like, subscribe, and of course, share with anyone you believe would gain something out of our podcast. And we'll see you again in episode 6. So bye for now, Patrick.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everyone.